Welcome to my video lecture on Chapter 11. QuickBooks allows us to allocate income and expenses for a specific job for a customer. In the past, when we learned about the customer area, we simply invoiced customers, but we did not set it up as having a specific job or project or assignment or basically any identifiable segment of a work for a customer. Identifying jobs allows the company to measure the profitability of an individual customer looking at specific projects or assignments. So how do you use these? So you can see here that I've got, for example, Hamilton Hotels. And then underneath Hamilton Hotels, I have 3 separate jobs going on, okay? And up here it says customers and jobs. I'm in the customer center. And it says active customers. Now I can also choose, to have all customers or just active customers, and it will show specific jobs. And if you look at this information, when I click on Hamilton Hotels, it says customer information. But when I click on Lakeside Hotel, it says job information. Same thing with Mountainside and Riverside. Those are all jobs associated with Hamilton Hotels. So basically, what will happen is we're going to go through this chapter, learn how to set up the jobs, then we're going to bill our customers, usually at an hourly rate for services provided, and then we're going to have billable time or billable hours. And we can then take that time tracking and then we can actually allocate expenses to a job. We can figure out how much we're going to invoice for the job. That will give us ultimately the profit. And then for a specific job, we can also use time tracking, and that will allow us to actually record time spent by your employees or yourself on a specific job, which will then flow right through into payroll for those jobs so that you can actually bill customers for the work that's been done. So in our chapter problem for Kristen Rena for Chapter 12, we're going to actually go in and track revenue and expenses for several jobs for a customer. In this case, that's going to be for Hamilton Hotels. And when the revenue is generated for that job, you're going to identify it, earning the revenue, and then allocating that to a job. We're also going to charge that selected payroll to a specific job and use some of the time tracking features. So as I previously mentioned, I brought up the customer center here where we can see Hamilton Hotels and then the 3 jobs that are associated with Hamilton Hotels, who is our customer. Obviously, the customer center contains a file for each customer, and then if there are specific jobs for the customer or multiple jobs, we have to identify those. In this case, it's Hamilton Hotels, and then we have those 3 jobs underneath. A job always has to be associated with the customer. You can't just create a job. For example, if I go in and do add job, okay, I have to say, okay, the name of that job, and then who the customer is. Do you see this up here? So who is the customer? Okay. Now the customer is Hamilton Hotels. The job, I'm just going to put in a new name here. We're going to call this like River Glen. Okay. That's the job under Hamilton Hotels. When I click OK, guess what? River Glen now shows as a job underneath Hamilton Hotels because in the setup, I made the customer Hamilton Hotel. So in this window for Hamilton Hotels, you're going to see the same information flow through, which is already in our customer center. However, we're going to put more additional info under job info, which is a tab we previously ignored. Okay. And in this case, it's called River Glen. So I'm going to actually name it River Glen. And I'm going to say it's a kitchen redesign or something like that, okay? But you can say, what kind of job is it? You could add different types in here if you so choose. We're just going to leave those blank. You can actually say with the job, maybe you presented the job, so it's pending, or the job is in progress, or it's, awarded just means that you have the job, but you haven't started anything yet. And then when the job is done, you can close it out. You typically have start dates, projected end dates, and then obviously in real time when you do finish the job, you can put in an end date. And of course, if the job ends up to be inactive, you can just check the box here to make the job inactive and click OK. one of the changes we have to make before we actually go in and bill time is we have to go into our item list, and we're going to have to add in the services of our assistant and the owner. And we have to put in the design services are $60 an hour, okay, which are right here, by the owner, okay. Decorating services is $50 an hour by the owner. And then for the assistant for design and decorating, it's $40. Now to go in, you would just simply go to add new, okay, and this is obviously a service. And then you can put in a number, but then you basically can put in the rate, and this is where you put in the rate amount, okay, and then the account that it would go to, for example, would be our revenue accounts here, which under income, and we're going to have design services and decorating services, okay. Now the tricky part is here, and a lot of students make mistakes on this, if you don't set it up correctly from the start that the owner gets 60 for design and 50 for decorating, if you have those swapped, or if you have the assistant making 60 and the owner only making 40 an hour, guess what's going to happen when you do your invoices and your billable time? It's going to be a mess. So my advice with this chapter is it can be a little bit tricky. Make sure that your setup is correct, because if your setup is wrong, it's going to flow all the way through into your invoice and into payroll, which is going to make a mess. Okay, so go through, make sure that you've set up these rates correctly, and then in the item list, you're going to make some changes. Make sure it says, you know, design services for the owner or design services for the assistant. Again, just make sure that you have those set up correctly. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to allocate some of our payroll expenses to a job. So what we're going to do is, back in Chapter 9, we have our 2 employees, and that has not changed. If I go up here to employees into the Employee Center, I still have Harry and Richard as my employees, okay? Now, Harry Renee is an admin assistant whose time is not billable. So he's not going to have any billable time that we're going to enter in, you know, timesheet, billable job information on, and then obviously that would then flow through into the invoice process. We're not doing that. Richard, though, however, is a design assistant, and so is the owner. She does design work as well as the owner. They get different rates, obviously, for both design and decorating. So Richard is going to have billable time, and Kristen Reyna, the owner, will also have billable time. So to make billable time, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to customers, and we're going to create an invoice, okay? And I'm going to pick an invoice here, and I'm going to do one for, let's just pick Lakeside Hotel, okay? Now, all right, this customer has some outstanding billable time that I have put on timesheets, which I will show you here in a minute after I just show you this. So just, I'm going to click OK right now, okay? And I'm going to click on OK. All right, so just to clear that out. So what you want to do is whenever you do the invoice and we have billable time, now you can see here that I have, you know, decorating services assistant, and this is what we've done in the past when we had billable time. We would just go in and then we would, from the customer drop down list, we're going to choose the job. So that's what's a little bit different about this chapter. Instead of just choosing Hamilton Hotels, okay, we're not just invoicing them. We're going to invoice by job. Okay, and so by doing it by job, that's going to mean that in this case, let's pretend that I have this billable time from his payroll coming in. Boom, there comes in 40 hours, and you can see that's a $700 charge, or $740 charge, excuse me, for those services. Now that came in directly from payroll, which I'll show you here in a minute. So in the past, what we would do is we would just manually put in the numbers, you know, and put in the rate or how many hours, you know, etc. that are coming in, you know, and then it would obviously update, and then the amount will be 80, as you can see here. But we're going to use some billable time. So let's get in and let's talk about time tracking. So I'm going to actually bring up the home page here. And on the home page, we're going to go in and we're going to go into Enter Time, and we're going to use this Use Weekly Timesheet, okay? And what we want to do is we want to choose our employee. Now be careful. Sometimes students want to choose and make Harry and Richard vendors. No. If you make them vendors, it's not going to flow to payroll. Okay, what you want to do is it has to be under, make sure you're choosing employee. Okay, so here's Richard. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find his timesheets. So I'm going by the dates in our book, and he has some May dates that are going to be billable time. Okay, the big thing with the timesheets when you're starting to fill these out is, number one, the date has to be correct. So whatever the dates are that are in your book, make sure that those are the dates that you have set up in QuickBooks. And also make sure, obviously, it's the correct person, the dates are correct, okay? Second thing is, you need to really be careful and make sure you have the right job chosen. If you choose River Glen instead of Lake, I'm going to say yes, I'm going to make this change, just ignore my message here. If I say that this is that River Glen that I added, guess what? If this was supposed to be Lakeside Hotel, it's going to be wrong. Your invoice is going to be wrong. It's going to be a mess. So this is so important that you have the right person, the right date, and the right job. Notice that I'm not just choosing Hamilton Hotels. No. It's customer and the job. So the job, remember, is what sits underneath that customer. So for each one, we have to do a specific time for each specific job, okay? Second thing that screws up students is they're like, okay, is this a design or is this decorating, right? So this Richard is an assistant. If I accidentally choose decorating services, that's at a different rate than the design services. So again, if you put that in wrong, guess what's going to happen? Your invoice is going to be messed up, okay? So those are some warnings about getting this right. That's the trickiest part of this chapter, is making sure that your data is entered in correctly, okay? Also have to make sure that your hours are put in correctly, okay? And then over here on the right-hand side, what we want to do is make sure that our time is all clicked here, okay, to be billable time, okay? So I'm going to save and close, okay? So let's say that I wanted to go in and I wanted to bill that time. I'm going to go up here to create invoice, okay? I'm going to clear this one. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick Lakeside, and it says, hey, there's outstanding billable time. I'm going to say yes, okay. And then what I want to do is I want to select that time. Now be careful. I just have the dates that I've put in so far, but be careful again with your dates. Make sure those are the right working dates, okay. So I'm going to click on OK, and it brings those in. And what happens is students will say, oh my gosh, my total for my invoice isn't right. It's all messed up. Guess how you fix it? You have to go back to your timesheets, okay? So if this number was wrong, don't finish it. Clear it. Go back to your timesheet, okay? So back in here on your timesheet, I got to open up that again. I'm under timesheet. So here's my timesheet here. So if that was incorrect, if Lakeside, if that was supposed to be design services for the assistant, I'm going to say yes. Okay, I'm going to save it, okay, save it, and then I'm going to minimize this, okay. I'm going to go back to my timesheet, go back to Lakeside again, click on yes, okay. All of these are correct, and then click OK. And you'll see here that I have a different total, okay? That's because I made sure that those were all design services. I had that first one as decorating services, which was incorrect, okay? So if you mess it up, go back to your timesheet. Make sure that you make your timesheet set to say billable. So let me choose Richard again, okay? Make sure that you go in, because once you run the timesheet, it's going to have this weird icon there that looks like a little mini invoice. If you want to rerun that, it says it's already been billed, just say yes, okay, just ignore that warning message. Rerun that, make it billable again once you fix it, okay, and then go back into the invoice again and try it again. That's my best advice with Chapter 11. So the next part is we're going to talk about how to pay an employee and then allocate their payroll expense to a job. So Richard did this work. He did that work for Hamilton Hotels. We tracked the time. So now what we have to do is we have to go in and we have to process his pay, okay? And out under the Employee Center, we're going to go in for Richard and we're going to actually pay him for that time that was worked, okay? So here's that pay date where he had done some work for Lakeside Hotels and that. And you're going to run this payroll just like you did back in Chapter 9, but the difference is if we go into the paycheck detail, check it out. We have detail for all of those jobs, okay? Notice again, this does not just say Hamilton Hotels here, okay? This says the job, right? It says Hamilton Hotels, it says Lakeside, okay? Hamilton Hotels, Mountainside. Hamilton Hotels, Riverside. And the reason for that is because it's job focused. We're actually going to bill the time that he spent. We invoice the customer for that time. We're going to pay him his wages based upon those hours, okay? It flows in through payroll. In the past, we would just put an hourly rate, we would put in hourly wages, and then we would just put in how many hours. We didn't have this customer job chosen. But now in Chapter 11, we're tracking by job, we're tracking all those expenses. We have to put that through payroll as well. All right, so that's the next part. We're going to get in here to going to the customer. I'm going to actually go to the home page. And I want to show you guys how to do a statement, okay? A statement is a history of a client or customer's account activity, okay? Many times you invoice a customer, you invoice them again, they send in a payment, they may still have a balance due. So what you do is you send them a statement, okay? So out here we can have our statement date, have our statement period. All of our dates are in 2017, so we should try to get some dates out there for that. So I'm just going to pick some crazy dates here, just so I have something show up. All right, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to preview. Now I can choose all customers. I can choose one customer. So if I just want to show, for example, just Hamilton Hotels, I can choose them. And by just choosing Hamilton Hotels as the customer, that will show me the detail for all of the jobs that are out there. See how it shows me their balance, Lakeside Hotel, Mountainside, and Riverside. Okay, and then it shows the total amount that's due. However, if I take and I choose, okay, just Lakeside, notice that it only shows me Lakeside. It shows me just the job. So just to have an understanding that when you do customer statements and send these out, that you can send it as a whole, meaning Hamilton Hotels and all of the jobs affiliated with them, or you can also do it by job, and that will show just in this case Riverside Hotel, for example. So the last part that I'm going to talk about are just some of the reports that we're going to run in this chapter. One of the first ones that you're going to run is out there under Accountant and Taxes. Nope, excuse me, Company and Financial. And we're going to go out there and we're going to run the profit and loss by job. Okay. Number one reason why this could be wrong would be your dates. Also, that you did not put out the information under the correct job. So if you go out here and you look at that Hamilton Hotels, right, you'll see totals for Lakeside, totals for Mountainside, totals for Riverside, and then a full total for all of the Hamilton Hotels. Okay, if those aren't showing up correctly or if there's numbers not in the right spot, guess what? That means that you did not enter in something correctly back when you entered in your job information. Okay, so you'd have to go back and change that. The next report I'm going to talk about is under reports, and then it's under jobs, time, and mileage. And we're going to look at the time by job summary report. And this shows us, I'm going to just do all dates here. I'm not always following the dates in the book as you're used to. This shows me all of the time that's been spent by whether it's the assistant or the owner for each job that we have going on. So what's nice with this is you can double click or use the quick zoom at this information, and then that will take you out and take you to their actual time here. So if I double click on this, it'll actually take me to their, in this case, it's a little bit different view, but you can actually look at the timesheet, okay, and that will bring up the timesheet, okay. That we just saw was the time clock, okay, but you can always bring up the timesheet by clicking on timesheet, okay. But that report is the time by summary report, and again, lists the job and time each employee devoted for each job, okay. The ending reports are going to be your journal, your profit and loss, and your balance sheet, which we've already done in the past. I don't need to show you how to do those. But one last part of the chapter that's important to talk about is just that, you know, income and expenses are allocated to jobs either by, as we learned, entering data directly into the Create Invoices window and Payroll window, or by activating that time tracking feature, which is what we did in Chapter 11, and then utilizing the weekly timesheet, okay? So the nice thing with this chapter is we definitely spend a lot more time going into tracking information for specific jobs and then learning how we can actually allocate that through payroll and building our customers through invoicing. Thank you.